Hi guys, and welcome to OP Painting, and in this tutorial we'll be painting the Knight Questor. We're starting off by undercutting the model with a Vallejo black primer, and then we'll move on to the airbrush and we'll give it a light coat gold, and then we'll move on to shinier gold for the highlights. Moving on to the shading, we'll shade the whole model with null oil. So we'll just load the whole model up with this shade and just work our way through the whole model and get into all the crevices and creases to bring out all that rich detail in the model. Once that's dry, once the shade is dry, then we'll move on to highlighting the actual gold. So we'll use shining gold first, and then we'll use the burnished gold. So with the shining gold, we're just going through all the raised areas and just carefully painting over them, leaving the dark shaded areas how they are. And then once you've done that through the whole of the model, then we'll move on to burnished gold. And the burnished gold is basically like the highlight of the gold. So we'll go through all the edges with the burnished gold, and it will bring out the detail, well, bring out the highlights more on the armor plates. Now moving on to the knee armor, using the airbrush now, just covered up the model with blue tack carefully so it doesn't go everywhere. With the airbrush you just get a nice gradient, get a nice transition and blends, and yeah, saves a lot of time. So and then afterwards I'll just paint in the edge highlights. But at the moment we're using the Maghreb blue, and we'll highlight it with a lighter blue. And now painting the little cloth on his armor, covering his armor. And just remember, when you paint, always water your paints down and do it in thin coats. So here I'm just doing thin coats because then it won't obscure the details. And I've started off with purple thin coat, then I'll give it a wash of shade of non oil, and then I'll move on to the purple again, but just mix it with slight white, and then I would add that for the highlights. But before doing that, I would use Warlock purple to just go over the areas again, and then I'll highlight it with the white. For the letters on the little robes sticking out, I'll use beast bone. I'll give it two thin coats, watered down, so it covers the surface evenly. And then I'll use none oil into the letters, so they fill the letters up. Wait for that to dry, and then I'll go over it bleach bone again, and I'll add a skull white as highlights in the raised areas. For the gold on the head, I'll use a old technique of dry brushing with using a shiny gold, and then I'll paint over the raised areas with the burnished gold. So it's just a simple dry brush which will bring out all the areas. With the dry brush you basically just load the brush up with paint, shining gold, and then completely wipe it off with a tissue. Just brush over the area and eventually you'll see the paint coming onto the raised areas. For the cloak, I'll paint it dark blue with an airbrush. So airbrushing a light layer, then I'll do a lighter blue from the bottom going up, so you get that nice transition of highlight from the bottom to top. Then I'll give it a Drakenhoth nightshade. Wash all over, wait for that to dry so all the shade gets into the crevices, and then I'll move on to the dark blue again and go over the cloak. And then I'll use the light blue to make that transition again from the bottom to up, and then I'll use white. I'll airbrush white on the edges of the cloak to give that sharp highlight. Okay, so carrying on with the same theme for the shield that we did for the cloak and the sword, we're using the same dark blue and give it a base coat, and then do a slow transition from the bottom of the shield up on both sides. You'll get a nice blend of light blue to dark. Then after that we'll give it a coat of non-oil shader, let that settle, and then when that's settled then we'll move on to spraying over again with dark blue and getting the transition at the bottom from light blue to dark. And once that's dry, then we'll just carefully painting the gold of the shield, very carefully going over with shining gold and then highlighting with burnished gold, and then as we did with the robe, give it undercoat of white, skull white, and then let that dry, then bleach bone, then fill the letters in with non-oil, let that dry, and then go over again with bleach bone and add a bit of highlights of white. And that's all for the shield. And inside the shield there's the hand with the belt that holds the shield. You can paint that brown, leathery, and obviously the hand is gold, and you could give it a wash of non-oil and just highlight that. You will see it because it is posed like that, so just take your time over it, because it will be seen. A lot of hands are behind the shield, so sometimes you don't have to paint it as detailed, but yeah, take your time over that though. Again, covering up the model and just exposing the left shoulder, which was the only blue armor bit left to do. Very similar to the knee, just dark blue from the top, from the bottom, and light from the top down. I'm just working it through basically, and once that's done you can take the blue tack and everything off and just clean up with the paint edges that you might have missed or gone over, gold or blue.
I suppose it did sound funny. I used to lie out on the beach, close my eyes, and may there be a pretty girl lying on the sand next to me.
And also don't forget, in the description box there's links to all the equipment I've used, the paints, the brushes, the airbrush, and if you just click on those links it'll take you directly to the products I've been using. Okay guys, thank you for watching another tutorial. Please like and subscribe, and in the meantime, happy painting! Check out my Patreon website where you can donate little as $1 a month to keep this channel going. Your support is much appreciated.